This time, I want to talk about why Argentina. What is it about Argentina that we were drawn to for our 50th? I'm setting my timer because I'm real big about making short videos to give punch. So we were drawn to Argentina for our to celebrate our 50th birthdays. That's one of the reasons, that is the reason why we know,
That's how our relationship with Argentina began.
yes, as well as our travel concierge.
That's that's
Yes,
right.
which we'll talk about in another video, but this is just a video about Argentina. So talk about April. Well, I can say from my husband and my standpoint, Argentina was always on the list. My husband has traveled many places. He is Scottish, and when we were dating, I would ask him if he had been there, and his answer was always Sera, many times, many times. But if I recall correctly, he had not been to Argentina, and he's always wanting to add something to his list. So he was drawn to Patagonia and Argentina, and I think he had been to Buenos Aires, but hadn't traveled outside of that. Um, what was the draw for you and for our 50th birthdays? Why Argentina for you?
Well, I knew that if we were going to get our husbands on board, and especially my husband, Mike, who is not as travel savvy as your husband, George, that it needed to have an appeal to him
Hmm.
because it was going to, require more time, more money, and it was just going to be a bigger commitment than going somewhere in the US or the Virgin Islands. And so I began to think about potential destinations that would have an appeal to him. And he is a hunter
Yeah.
and he loves the outdoors. And at some point along the way, he had mentioned a hunting lodge for shooting doves in Argentina because Argentina is like the capital of the world for dove
Right.
hunting.
Yes.
It's just amazing. So that was really sort of a sticking point for Argentina with me. And when I brought it up to Mike as a possibility, he very quickly said, well, an attorney friend of mine has a connection in Argentina, and he says we have to call Vicky if we're going to plan a trip there. And once we made that phone call and realized the resource, the human resource we had in Argentina to plan a trip, it just made so much sense um, for the mechanics of the trip. But as we read about Argentina, the wildlife, the wine country, just
The wine, that was one of my draws.
yeah, it was that was yeah,
But I will
exactly.
say Iguazu and the waterfall was a
Yes.
big draw to for us too.
Yes, I love when I travel to be overwhelmed by the natural landscape of a place.
Yeah.
And Iguazu Falls is a wonder of the world.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things I read about Iguazu Falls was a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt that when she saw Iguazu, her response was, "Oh, poor Niagara."
Oh,
Because in comparison to Niagara Falls, which is a majestic,
yeah.
beautiful expression of God's creation, it was
It you
it was
yeah.
dwarfed by the power and expanse of Iguazu Falls. And that was definitely a draw for me. And I am so glad that we went and saw it while we were there. So there were those kind of things started adding up pretty quickly
Mhm.
to make Argentina kind of a no-brainer
Right.
as a destination.
Right. Right.
What about you? What were some of the things that specifically about
Well, I had
Argentina that you
traveled,
loved?
at wine. I had traveled. We'd been to South Africa. We had been to California, and so the Malbecs called me to see if I could try them too. Sarah, yeah. Okay, so we have a really special place in Argentina called Casa Pampa Ranch, which we feel like this connection was divine. I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah.
it just came out of the blue and things started falling in our lap in terms of even creating Rekindle, where we felt like almost obedience. Like it was like to be obedient to what the Spirit was leading us to do. It
Hmm.
was right there. So tell me about Casa Pampa, because you met Rick, who is one of the Casa Pampa, like he sort of staffs it, one of the head of the staff, really integral part of Casa Pampa. And you met him for breakfast one morning, like last July. So tell me about your experience with that.
When we were in Argentina in 2022, we had this sort of faint, distant idea. It would be so cool to recreate this experience for couples. And we just sort of put it on the bulletin board and didn't revisit it with much seriousness
But we were
until,
talking to Vicky about it too. Remember, we were
yes,
dreaming because she actually
yes,
came and traveled with us for a while.
yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
Vicky is our travel concierge,
Hmm.
and she ended up joining us at the dove hunting lodge for a few days. And during that time
Because
together,
we are that fun.
yeah, people want to be with us.
That's right.
People want to be where we are. We'll need to get a testimonial of Vicky on here.
That's right.
But we had just sort of put it on the bulletin board as that's a great idea. We need to come back to that. Well, Vicky had been sharing this idea with Rick, who is a staff member at Casa Pampa, another hunting ranch of big game like red stag and fallow deer in the La Pampas province of Argentina, which is really northern Patagonia. And he got really excited about the idea and wanted to be a host site for Rekindle.
Mm.
So Vicky called and said, "You need to meet him." So I went and met him at the ranch house on Columbiana, felt appropriate since he
Yep.
was from Casa Pampa Ranch that we would meet at the ranch house, and had a great connection and conversation for nearly 2 hours where I shared with him our initial ideas about Rekindle and how we would approach it. And he said, "Listen, this is like 35,000 acres of God's country. And people who come here experience the supernatural just because of the just majestic
Mm.
um, characteristics of nature
Yeah.
there." He
Yeah.
said, "I really believe this is the right place for you to launch
Mhm.
Rekindle. Would love for you to come and visit." And I was like, "Well, I mean, you mean like come and visit?" And yeah, so that's how we ended up there in March, is that Rick really pursued us and had a vision. Like he very quickly got in sync with us about hosting couples
Mhm.
at the ranch to, create space for them to detach
Mm.
from their typical rhythms of life and to reconnect with themselves, with each other, and with God. And then when we went to Casa Pampa, I mean, it's 100 miles
Yeah.
from the next human being.
Yeah.
When we got off the main road from Santa Rosa, we landed in an airport that was, I mean, basically a
Tiny.
gas station. It was a
Yeah.
gas station.
Like I've never been in an airport like that before.
I don't know if I could have laid down horizontal between the entrance and exit doors.
It's
It
true.
would have been close, but it got the job done. And then
Yep.
we got in a car, a van, and we, made our way to Casa Pampa. And we got off the main road an hour and a half from the airport. It was 25 miles from the entrance gate of the ranch
Yep.
to the lodge. And that just gives you an idea of just getting further and further and further away from
Mm.
the demands of your everyday life and just creating a sacred space where you can detach and refocus
Yeah.
your mind and your heart and your soul on something deeper. And that's the experience that we had while we were there. It's amazing that they have Wi-Fi there,
I was gonna say, like,
but they do.
people are like, oh, what if I need to get in touch with my children? Which we felt the same way, but their
Mhm.
Wi-Fi, that was one of the reasons why we wanted to scout it. We wanted to make sure and go before couples to make
Yeah,
sure that it may be rustic, but it could be a place where you could
yeah,
rest, but also still connect to the things that you still needed to connect with.
yeah.
Um, okay, so the sunsets and the animals at this place, like I've never seen a sunset
Mhm.
like this before. And okay, I've got a list of the animals that I just want to read. Fallow deer, puma, which puma is their only predator in the area. But Rick's like, he's not really scared of the puma because he says they're kind of like cats. They don't want to interfere with you. Red
Or
stag,
interact with you. They don't want to interact with you.
yeah,
Yeah.
interact, yeah. Red stag, which is the deer with the huge rack. But when we go in October, they will actually shed their rack so that we could go shed hunting to find, racks that have
Yeah.
fallen off. There's feral goats, wild boar, black buck, mouflon, hybrid sheep, and water buffalo, which we saw on the way in late at night to see a water buffalo. You're just like, this is crazy. It's just crazy, but it really does help you detach. What were you going to say?
And I was going to say, and because we're actually going to be at the ranch in the off season of like the major hunting season, will be over. So there won't be hunters there hunting red stag. That means the acreage is really available to
Safe.
hike, walk. Like
Yeah,
it's very safe. It's wonderful to stargaze there, in addition to just the glorious sunsets that we saw every day. I mean, there was one day we thought it's not going to be a great sunset today because it was super cloudy and there was some
right.
rain during the day. And we were like, oh my word,
Yeah,
this is incredible. Like
yeah.
it just blew our minds. But in addition to the sunsets, the stargazing, like the
Mhm.
first night we stepped out of the van upon arrival, we looked up and we're like, I think I've just seen more stars
Yeah.
than I've ever seen in my life collectively.
Yeah, and in Argentina they have an app that all the Argentinians follow. They're like, you got to look at this app, and that's one of the things that we want our couples to do is really
Learn
learn
about
about the galaxies.
constellations. That's
Yeah,
right. Mhm.
absolutely. Okay, let's talk about the place itself. Like there's people out there that they're like, okay, Casa Pampa, like it's a ranch, it's where hunters go. You describe it as rustic, like will I sleep well? Am I going to be comfortable? Is there heat and air conditioning? And in terms of like the weather, so what will the weather in October is actually
Mm.
what is it? It's they're moving to spring, right?
Yeah,
Because we're moving to
our
fall.
fall is their spring,
Yeah,
and so it's cooler temperatures. So just bringing some layers, like a cardigan or a light hoodie, and a variety. It's kind of like layers.
right.
And October is a really nice time to go to
Kind of like
Argentina.
April here,
Yeah,
wouldn't you say?
yeah.
Yeah,
And that's one of the reasons we want to go to the ranch, because it is rustic, but it is also very charming and comfortable. So we made sure, because it's typically a hunting lodge, they have single beds in the rooms, and there's beds, there's a bathroom in each room.
but you can
But
push the beds.
yeah, they push the beds together, and we ask them, like, go ahead and do that for me and Sarah. Push
Yeah,
the beds together and put whatever the king size topper is that you do. Like, we want to know what the couples would experience. And we slept very
yeah,
comfortably,
it
you
was.
know.
And besides that, like the food, we got to talk about the food and the wine.
Oh, yeah.
The food and
Mm-hmm.
the wine, like it is 5 star in terms of the breakfast, which is kind of continental, but by the time you get to lunch and dinner, like
Yeah.
it is as much wine as you want, or spirits,
Cocktails.
cocktails, cocktail
Mm-hmm.
hour at
Yes.
the sunset, and then the
Mhm.
dinners are
And they
fresh.
use the game. Yeah, like
Yes.
everything is fresh. So that we had a red stag ravioli in a cream sauce that just melted in our mouth.
Mhm.
We had, quiche. We had um, pizza. Oh my gosh, I
Oh
was
yeah,
like,
the
okay,
pizza.
I'm gonna need to have the pizza 2 or 3 times the next time
Yeah.
I hear it. Had wild boar bacon on it.
Yep, because
Had
we didn't realize that Italians after World War II actually migrated to Argentina,
Yeah,
and so
that's
there's a
right.
large Italian community there.
Yeah. One of my favorite experiences at the ranch was the asada, which
Oh, the
is a
asado.
traditional, like, Argentine barbecue. It's a
Yeah,
big gathering. All the meat is cooked outside over a fire. They even cook the empanadas, which were our appetizer. They had those in a big kettle of oil that was heated by fire.
Fire. By
Yeah,
fire.
firewood.
Yeah.
Just a wood burning fire
And then a rack,
outside.
a literal rack of lamb.
Lamb.
And it's this hut in the middle of
Yeah.
nowhere.
So a pulperia is where they host the asado at Casa Pampa, and a pulperia, it used to be like a watering hole or a cantina type place for gauchos who were moving their herds across, the landscape. And so they would stop there to get a drink, a beverage, a meal. And so this pulperia still exists at Casa Pampa. And so they use it for guests to create an authentic Argentine experience. And that was really one of my favorite meals and favorite days at the
Well,
ranch that we'll
and
create for couples.
like the table is set. There
Yeah.
it's like a barbecue, but it's like a beautiful table. And then Rick and Luis
Luis.
played guitar and they sang in Spanish. I mean, it's like you're transported to a
Yeah.
whole nother culture and
Yeah.
you soak it in and you're like, I don't have these experiences at home. I just want to soak this in. And the staff is just so attentive,
Yeah.
so attentive.
Yeah. I was going to highlight the staff, that the service that you get there is just top shelf.
Mhm.
The people that are there, they really want you to have an incredible experience. They are very responsive and attentive. It just seemed like every time we were turning around, they were asking us if we needed anything else. They were
Yeah.
setting up, cocktail hour. They made sure the breakfast was available. They were serving the lunch and the dinner. Um, that was one of the things we noticed about the space is um, that the staff were really committed to
Mhm.
making sure that the guest had everything that they needed and were very comfortable. And
Yeah.
so we feel confident
Mhm.
in bringing couples to Casa Pampa that they'll be well taken care of,
Yeah.
well
Absolutely.
fed, well watered, you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
they'll be well.
Hydrated, well hydrated.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
And also I was thinking about this just like as an aside. I sort of think like if it's really good staff, I want to leave a really good tip. And part of what we've put into the cost is the gratuities. So you're
Right.
not nickel and dimed in this. Like you're not like, oh, there's an extra $100 here or there. Like that's already
Mhm.
included in the
Yeah.
cost because that's really important because we do want to take care of the staff and they are very attentive and we want them to remember Rekindle as something that they're like, wow, that was an incredible experience with Americans.
And they're living on site because remember, this is 100 miles from the nearest town, and many of them are not from the nearest town.
Right.
So they will come and they will just be living at Casa Pampa for the period of time that we're hosting
Yep.
Rekindle. So they're there.
Yeah.
They're there 24/7 to serve. And I think that's a great point that you make. And that's one of the things we appreciated about Vicky, the travel concierge. When we went, she made sure we had a spreadsheet
Oh, yeah.
before we left on our trip with any potential extra cost. Like the majority of the cost we paid up front and we knew, but it might be things like tip for um
Uber,
housekeeping, or yes,
a
a car
meal.
service,
Yeah.
or if it was a meal that was going to be our choice at the destination of our preference, then she would just say estimate this amount. And so I feel confident that couples are not going to be caught off guard,
Mm,
and especially you're going to when you purchase Rekindle, you're going to know exactly what you're getting and paying for. But even your beyond Rekindle experience, you can know that in addition to whatever the price tag is on Buenos Aires or Mendoza or Patagonia, that Vicky will be clear,
mhm.
with you about any additional costs you might need to anticipate. So
Yeah.
that's another reason I love Argentina, is because we have a connection there
Yeah.
who can guide us and guide anyone we're hosting in a way that sort of eliminates all the guesswork.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. If anybody wants to know more about Rekindle, they can go to the website Sparrow, like the bird sparrow, counsel, COUNSEL.com. And you can look for Rekindle to find out more information. We spent a lot of time working on the website to give you as much information as possible. If you have any questions, you can email us at rekindlexoxo@gmail.com with any questions you may have. Oh, you can follow us on Instagram at Rekindle XOXO. And you can follow us on Facebook as well, which is Rekindle, I think, Enrichment Travel. So we would love to answer any questions you may have. Anything else, April, you want to finish with?
Strong.
Yeah.
Yo quiero Argentina.
Adios, amigos.
Adios. Besos.